Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with jazz double bassist George DeLancey. He grew up in Cambridge, Ohio, and went on to learn at the prestigious program like the Columbus Youth Jazz Orchestra and Michigan State University Jazz Studies program, and there he studied under the great Rodney Whitaker. In 2016, he released his self-titled album, and it's taking off. He's learned from cats like Johnny O'Neill, Houston Person, Fuller and Bria Skonberg over the years, and there's so much more to do in a career that is off and running. So please, get to know him and dig this interview, my friends.
George, thanks for taking a little time out today. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So let me go ahead and start off here and get an idea of what's going on with you. I know you have your latest 2016 self-titled album out, but give me a snapshot, so to speak, of activity in this new album.
I'm just kind of mostly playing around New York and doing gigs, around town, and I just got off the road for a couple gigs with Bria Skonberg. I'll be back in Ohio, my home state, over the holiday, playing a little bit and just taking care of the holiday stuff. And I'm just working on some new music, trying to think about what my next move is going to be with the next record. And yeah, just kind of seeing how it goes. I've been pretty gratified with. I've got some pretty good reviews and good reception for the last album. So I'm trying to just keep moving ahead.
So how does a kid from Cambridge, Ohio, grow up to become a jazz musician? What was it about your childhood that got you there?
Well, when I was a kid, the whole time I was growing up, my mom and dad listened to lots of music. My mom especially listened to, a large variety of stuff. She listens to, she really loves Vivaldi and Tchaikovsky, and she loves Irish music, and she loves jazz music too, and even when I was a kid, I remember she had a box set of Robert Johnson that she bought. And this is in the early 90s. And I just kind of remember looking at it and 20, 25 years later thinking, man, my mom was listening to Robert Johnson. And that's kind of, so I was kind of grew up just with music being present. And she encouraged me, and my dad both. They encouraged me to start playing, and I really love jazz. I loved Louis Armstrong when I was a kid, and I took up the trumpet. And then the next year, I wanted to play bass, the upright bass, and so they conceded, and they told me, look, you're taking lessons. We just shelled out some money for an upright bass, so you're going to take lessons. So they just kind of encouraged me and helped guide me, and I was lucky I had some good teachers. I studied with, my first teacher was named Jock Gray, and he had me studying classical technique and classical methods and the solo repertoire. So, and then he introduced me to Mark Morton, who was the principal bass of the Columbus Symphony. I was lucky in that regard that I had people that is kind of what you need to do, because Cambridge, Ohio is nowhere, basically. They just, I just met this guy and he introduced me to this guy, and I wound up, I had a friend from Cambridge named Larry Cook, who's a great bass player who lives in New York now, and at the time he was in college. He actually, I think he was out of college and playing in Columbus, and he told me to go audition for the Youth Jazz Orchestra, he and my band director. So I auditioned for the Columbus Youth Jazz Orchestra when I was a senior in high school, and Todd Stoll was the director, and he heard me audition, and he took me outside, and he gave me Rodney Whitaker's phone number. He said, look, man, call up Rodney Whitaker and go get a lesson. So it just kind of snowballed. I kept meeting these great teachers and great mentors, and they all, had a good impact on my playing, and I think that I had a good attitude and a good work ethic about it, and they responded to that. They saw that I was serious about playing, and that I wanted to play and get better. So it was just good fortune to an extent, and I had good parents who encouraged me to pursue it.
So, speaking of all these great teachers and these performers that you've been around, I mean, You mentioned Rodney Whitaker, and you've been around, Johnny O'Neill. You mentioned Bria Skonberg. What do you learn from people that have been around for a long time? What do you get from them?
Well, I got many things from Rodney. One of the things that you can only get from a guy like that is sort of the heritage, because Rodney's mentors were, all of the great musicians that brought him up in Detroit, and like Donald Walden and Marcus Belgrave and Ralph Armstrong. And then he also, when he got to New York, he was being mentored by Neil Hinton and Ray Brown and Percy Heath. And so just kind of the fact that he has all of that, all of that in his blood, he really is part of the tradition, and it kind of takes somebody like that to impart that, just the experiences that he's had, playing with so many musicians and being all over the world and kind of playing the whole history of the music in his career. Somebody like that can pass those experiences on. Same thing with Johnny O'Neill. Johnny's a jazz messenger, and he just has such a great feel at the piano. He has probably the most swinging feel of any musician I've played with, or he's in the top, 2 or 3. And playing with guys like that, it's just you can't help but swing. They just bring you up to the top of your ability, because they're such excellent musicians.
Well, they've obviously made a deep impact on you, because you actually are an educator now. And what do you try to teach the kids that you are in seminars with or in an educational setting?
I try to focus on fundamental things as much as I can. And again, most of this comes from just my experience as a student of Rodney. And I think that when it comes to playing the bass, the hardest thing about it is probably just playing the instrument. And so if I'm working with bass students one-on-one, I'm trying to focus on getting them to hold the bass with good posture and have good fundamental technique. And just to work on the things I work on, really, what I work on every day is just having a good sound and playing in tune. And then the things that you have to do well to play with other musicians, keep good time and walk good bass lines and things like that. And then just making sure that they're tuning into the music and not just not thinking about it from purely theoretical, ideas, or just, most of the time with students, they just are looking for ways to get better. Well, the most important thing for you to do is to be listening to the music and kind of immersing yourself in, Louis Armstrong and Charlie Parker. Even if you're trying to play like Christian McBride, you need to be getting inside the core of the music.
Right on. So let me ask you this: who influenced you the most? Who would you consider your jazz heroes?
Rodney had the biggest direct influence on my playing, and I just want to say that was a benefit of Michigan State. There's a lot of great professors rather, and they can all play, and they all do play. So you get exposure to some really great playing firsthand, and that makes a big difference. And I would say on records, it would be Mingus is my favorite. Well, he's definitely my favorite writer, and he's one of my favorite bass players. He's in some ways he's an underrated bass player, I think, but he's definitely my favorite writer. And I really love Sam Jones. I really love Ray Brown and Paul Chambers. And I could go on and on the whole list of all the great bass players, but I'd say those guys, Scott LaFaro, those guys all had a big influence on the way I try to play, and Oscar Pettiford, certainly. Those would be my top influences.
If you could get into a time machine and see any of them, who would you want to go see, and where would you go?
That's tough. Probably I would kind of like to see Mingus, to see some of the group that he had. If there was a way that I could be at a date where he didn't go berserk, then I would probably do that. To see him at the Vanguard with, when they were rehearsing the Black Saint and the Sinner Lady, or to see his group with Dolphy. That would be something. I would really love to have seen Pettiford play in person, because Pettiford is just so musical, and his playing is so effortless. I would just kind of like to see it. There's not a lot of existing video of him, so
Yeah.
It would have been great to see. And of course, I would have loved to see Duke's band. I would really have loved to see Duke Ellington's band, the early band from the late 20s and 30s. To see them in person and to hear that music live would have really been something.
Without a doubt. Let me ask you this: why do you love jazz?
I don't know. I just love it. I love all different kinds of music. I don't know exactly why I am kind of partial to jazz. I think it's probably because of the freedom and there's so much you can do in jazz music. I love country and western too, and just to draw a comparison, country and western and jazz are both based off of the same kinds of basic grooves, the same kinds of basic harmony. It's American music, but country and western, you are kind of relegated to a very specific role as a bass player, or any musician in that band. It's, you don't just get to kind of make your own way. Well, jazz music, you have a very specific role as a bass player, and you are, it's very important for you to drive the band and support the other musicians while you're playing your role. But there's so many ways that you can go and ways the music can open up, and just playing the whole idea of playing solos is definitely can be overblown in jazz music, but it's I think nevertheless it's a lot of fun, and I just have to say that listening to my favorite composers like to Mingus or to Duke or Gil Evans, it has such a strong emotive quality that they really get to some things in their writing. And the great improvisers do that too. Charlie Parker and Lester Young and all of them. They really kind of can rip your heart out. And it's not to say that other kinds of music don't offer that, but it's very evident to me in jazz music, and that's kind of what I've been trying to get to, in my learning and working on it.
So let me ask you this. Let's say we hook up in about 10 years and talk. What are you going to want to see happen in your career? What's next for you?
Well, the immediate thing I've been working on is a program back in Ohio that's called Appalachian Muse, and it's something that my parents started years ago. Just to kind of, it's just a nonprofit organization to kind of bolster the arts in the Appalachian region. Just recently, since I came to New York, I've been doing a lot of school programs. I did a lot with Winard Harper in Jersey City, and he's really great at that, and he makes a very strong effort to bring the music to the kids in the community. And I've done a lot of those kinds of things with I did the Jazz at Lincoln Center Jazz for Young People program, and that's been expanding a lot. So I kind of think of that as an obvious thing that I would like to see happen in my hometown. So what we're doing with Appalachian Muse is working on coordinating those kinds of school performances for grade schools and just to give the kids in that area some exposure to the music, because they don't get it anywhere else. So kind of in the beginning stages of that, and so far it's looking promising, and I'd really like to see that take off and turn into something over the next couple of years where we're playing the music for the kids, and we're also helping to facilitate kids who want to get started studying music or or getting into any of the different kinds of arts. I feel strongly about that. So that's something that's on the plate, and then just want to keep playing. I hope to get opportunities to play with other great musicians, and keep putting out records and see what happens.
So everything's going to come down to this final question here, and I want to know this to get to the essence of who you are. Everyone has a version of who you are, your family, your friends, those that you play for, the people that buy your music. But when you wake up and face the day, who do you think you are?
Oh, geez. I probably shouldn't answer. But I don't have an answer for you. All I can say is that every day I'm trying to get better, and just practice the bass, get the fundamentals together, get my chops together, and learn more music. And that's kind of I think that's kind of a microcosm of how you, or at least how I try to live my life. Is every day you just you're trying to be better than you were the day before.
That's perfect, man. That's a great way to wrap everything up. George, thank you for taking some time out, opening up, and thanks for all the music.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to yet another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in New York, Kansas City, Ohio, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to George for his time and his music. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store, or visit neonjazz at youtube.com. And for all things Neon Jazz, the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the music, my friends.
Neon Jazz.